To be insulted is to be tested, and the Stoic is the only one who understands that the test was never about the other person. It was always about mastery of the self. We live in an era where words move faster than reflection, where a sentence typed in seconds can echo in someone's mind for days, and where identity has become so tight-lifed with perception that disagreement feels like danger. In this environment, insults appear powerful, but their power is almost entirely borrowed. It comes from our interpretation, our agreement, our willingness to internalize noise as truth. The Stoic Blueprint begins with a disruptive realization. An insult is not an event, it is a proposal. It asks for your participation. Without that participation, it collapses. This is why Stoics insist that no one can truly harm your character from the outside. They can describe you, misjudge you, caricature you, but they cannot define you unless you adopt their description as your own. When someone calls you a fool, the emotional reaction most people feel is not caused by the word itself, but by the fear that it might be true or that others might believe it. The pain lives in imagination, reputation, and ego, not in the sound waves. Epictetus offered one of the most disarming responses ever recorded. When told that someone was speaking badly about him, he suggested that the critic must not know his other faults, otherwise they would have mentioned more. This response is not sarcasm, it is perspective. It reflects a person who no longer treats image as something fragile. It signals psychological ownership. The Stoic does not rush to defend the mask because they are busy building the face beneath it. Processing an insult begins with inquiry. First, is it true? This is the most uncomfortable question, which is why most people skip it. If the insult contains truth, even partially, it stops being an attack and becomes information. Information is useful. Information is leverage. The Stoic sees criticism as data, sometimes poorly delivered, sometimes emotionally charged, but still potentially valuable. In this way, insults can accelerate growth faster than praise, because praise rarely forces examination. Second, is the source qualified? Not all opinions carry equal weight, yet modern life exposes us to a constant stream of unfiltered judgment. The Stoic filters aggressively. You already do this in other domains. You would not accept technical advice from someone without knowledge, nor medical advice from someone without credibility. Extending this filter to personal judgment changes everything. If a person demonstrates poor character, emotional volatility, or chronic negativity, their insult reveals more about their perception than your reality. The weight of their words decreases automatically. Third, what state is the other person in? Insults often originate from insecurity, frustration, fear, or the need for status. People attempt to regulate their internal discomfort externally. The Stoic reframes the moment. Instead of, I am being attacked, the question becomes, what pain is being expressed here? This does not excuse behavior, but it prevents emotional contagion. You stop absorbing what was never yours. Compassion becomes a stabilizer. The insult becomes diagnostic rather than destructive. This shift marks the exit from reactive living. Most people experience insults as triggers, automatic chains of interpretation, emotion, defense, rumination. The Stoic inserts space into that chain. Space creates choice. Choice creates freedom. You begin to see insults as social noise, signals moving through a network of human insecurity and misunderstanding. Some signals contain useful feedback, many do not. Your responsibility is not to silence the noise. That is impossible, but to decide what enters your internal architecture. There is also an identity shift happening underneath this practice. But if your self-worth depends on alignment with your own values, honesty, effort, discipline, kindness, then insults lose leverage. They may still sting, but they do not define trajectory. You evaluate yourself using internal metrics rather than external reactions. This is what Stoics mean by sovereignty. Another layer emerges over time: emotional endurance. When you stop reacting immediately, you notice patterns. Many insults repeat. The same criticisms appear in different voices. You realize that human judgment is predictable, often simplistic, and frequently inconsistent. This recognition reduces novelty, and novelty is a major amplifier of emotional pain. What once felt sharp begins to feel familiar. Familiar things lose power. The Stoic is not emotionless. The Stoic is less surprised. There is also strength in restraint. Responding to every insult grants equal authority to every voice. Silence, when intentional, is not weakness. It is hierarchy. You demonstrate that not everything deserves your energy. Energy becomes a strategic resource. The person who controls their responses controls their direction. Over time, people sense this stability. The environment changes around those who are difficult to provoke. At a deeper philosophical level, insults expose attachment to image. Humans maintain multiple versions of themselves: the private self, the aspirational self, and the perceived self. Insults threaten the perceived self, which is why they feel urgent. Stoicism gently shifts focus back to the private self, the domain of action, intention, and character. You cannot fully control perception, but you can continuously refine reality. This makes insults less existential. They become commentary, not verdicts. There is also a paradox. The more secure you become, the more open you are to criticism. Fragility rejects feedback because it fears collapse. Stability can examine feedback without losing structure. This is why Stoic resilience does not produce arrogance. Ideally, it produces curiosity. Even poorly delivered criticism might contain a signal. The ego wants to protect identity. Wisdom wants to refine it. Choosing refinement over protection is the long game. In the digital age, this practice becomes essential. Scale changes exposure. A single action can generate thousands of interpretations from people with different values, contexts, and projections. Attempting to correct every misinterpretation is psychologically unsustainable. The Stoic solution is selective engagement. You respond where dialogue is possible and disengage where reaction is the goal. Not every comment is a conversation. Not every voice is a teacher. Insults also test narrative control. When you internalize an insult, you allow someone else to write a line in your self-story. When you examine it, filter it, and decide consciously, you remain the author. This is the core power these Stoics protect: authorship of interpretation. Events happen. Words are spoken. Meaning is assigned. The assignment is yours. Over long periods, this creates an unshakable baseline. Praise does not inflate you excessively. Insults do not shrink you excessively. Both become information streams rather than identity anchors. You move with more consistency because your internal reference point is stable. This is emotional maturity expressed as philosophical practice. The final insight is simple but difficult. Insults reveal opportunity. Opportunity to practice restraint. Opportunity to practice humility. Opportunity to practice clarity about values. Without friction, these qualities remain theoretical. With friction, they become embodied. In this sense, insults are not interruptions to growth. They are one of its primary mechanisms. The Stoic does not seek insults, but when they arrive, they recognize the training embedded within them. You have learned to prepare the mind before the day begins, to face uncertainty without rehearsing suffering, to convert obstacles into material, to separate what is yours from what is not, and finally, to remain steady when confronted by judgment. The external world continues to speak, praise, criticize, misunderstand, and project. None of that stops. What changes is your relationship to it. You stop negotiating your peace with every voice that passes by. You become selective, deliberate, internally referenced. The world may still raise its volume, but your internal landscape remains structured. Calm is no longer dependent on agreement. Dignity is no longer dependent on reputation. Freedom is no longer dependent on silence from others. You understand that identity built from reaction is unstable, but identity built from choice endures. The insult arrives. You examine it. You decide. And then you continue forward, unchanged where it does not matter, improved where it does. That is the Stoic exam, and the smile is not performance. It is recognition that nothing essential was ever at risk.